Hi everyone, and what we're going to be doing now is looking at Module 7 for the August run of the UCT UXD course. What I've decided to do is look at 5 of the better sets of wireframes that were done, to talk through a couple of different things that one should look at and potentially look at including a set of wireframes, both in the general context, and then also looking at the specific chainmail scenario. So we'll start with Peter's, which was very well put together. The first thing on Peter's sign-in page is you'll see what he's done is he's used annotations to just explain what's happening. Be very careful not to overuse those, but it's very, very helpful early on to add detail. And what's also useful is, especially for users who or consumers of the wireframe who are possibly not entirely conversant with different things, you'll see that he's explaining things like the password strength and the reCAPTCHA, which are important, and making clear some of the decisions that were made. Sometimes you may want to just include descriptions to go along with the wireframe, not necessarily annotate too heavily. One thing that I alluded to in the assignment is that obviously security is very important. So we think about the product use context, that's something we've been developing for some time, the concept of security. And so what Peter did very effectively is he put it front and center, and there was a clear indication in his listing of what was trusted, what was not trusted, what was new. And so there's a deeper understanding than just purely the fact that it's mobile, the fact that it's email. There was also consideration of security early on, and not just simply indicating it, but then also when going to the next screen, also looking at saying, clearly directing the user to something that was what to do when there's an unsafe sender, for instance. And looked at things like not being logged in, pointing out to the person that they should be logged out. So those were good security touch points, I felt, that went well, including in the sending of an email, encryption, set expiry. So when looking at Peter's wireframes, the concept of security was flowing throughout the application and throughout the wireframe, which was very, very effective, because essentially it meant that that was a cohesive part of the product. He included things like today's security tip. So throughout the experience, security was front and center. Onto another one of the wireframes that was well done. Again, here we've got, and this is, I think, the reason why I wanted to include this, to point out that you don't have to design extra elements. Sometimes just having a very, very straightforward and clean wireframe is certainly not a bad thing. So pointing out that where the security icon would be, that there would be a security window, video, some basic informative stuff coming forward. And then what I liked particularly about this set of wireframes was that it wasn't simply looking at copying something like Gmail. There were some interesting ideas that were brought into the interface. Logo is probably a little bit too big, but the fact that security and settings is up front, and there are all these different icons being brought together, I think this for me was a good example of how a set of wireframes is going to evolve and it's going to grow over time, and they would probably refine from them. But it's a good, quick draft of a set of wireframes. I think if you look at what Peter was doing, that probably took quite a lot of time. This is a good example of how can I quickly put together a set of good wireframes. Now going in and looking at Tanya's, I thought what was quite good with these set of wireframes is they were fairly considerate. There was a verification step, which was well put together. There was the idea that then the code would have to come back, and that it would have to be, that it would have to be resent if it wasn't received. That for me meant that these set of wireframes were fairly well considered. It wasn't just simply sort of throwing the stuff down. There was a lot of consideration of how would the person actually use each of the different pages, and there's some good practice there. I like this sort of semi-irreverent, like compose new email, let's get down to business, queuing up this tutorial paradigm, which I thought was good. It's an important thing not to lose sight of, is no matter how universal an interface might be, we may still need to queue our users through an interface, and I think that's an important thing not to lose sight of. And then after that, it was pretty straightforward, pretty clear aspect. So security could have probably been a little bit more emphasized in this particular wireframe, but nice, clean, clear, direct. I would think that text, one small observation here is that this bar is speaking to this text area, and therefore should actually fall above it. Be careful with those kind of elements. Don't just move elements for elements' sake. But otherwise, I felt that this was a strong, again, nice, simple, clean, not trying to invent controls, not having to be a designer, just getting straight down to it. Angie's kind of got a little bit more of a directly worked up aesthetic, and that's certainly fine. I don't think that that's a problem, but not all of us are necessarily going to be great designers. What I thought was good about this was, again, security front and center. There were explanation boxes in context, and this clustering and the grouping of 1, 2 create account. It's good in terms of making it clear to the user what are the steps that they're going to have to take. When they come into chainmail, there again, here we see the verified, non-verified security again coming into the fore. The logo speaking to secure email, I think that's an important thing. There's a nice call to action in terms of upgrade storage, so we're thinking about it from a product perspective. Here there's a lot of explanation and annotational notes. One thing, this is a good paradigm. If you are going to use a lot of explanation notes, it is nice to give the wireframe clean and then have a version of the wireframe with your annotation notes. What I often do is I will include like a numbered index on particular places on this. So instead of having the box indicate a particular thing, I might say there's a key of 1 and then have an assisting document to say, cool, what are the things I want to draw attention about 1. Here we see the proper allocation of the styling where it lives against the text. And good, nice, clean and clear set of wireframes. The last set of wireframes we can look at are Neelam's. What I thought was nice about this was there was some coherent thinking, a lot of lifting from good general patterns and paradigms, but at the same time some interesting ideas that sort of emerged in the application. Putting security settings up front, obviously important. Security was something I was looking for. I think if we look at if we look at the modern world, and we look at the modern product design, security is something we have to be very, very considerate of. And so it's not just limited to chainmail. I think it's something that we would need to consider in our design, just as we would accessibility. It's a core element. Here again, we have this kind of, again, I just want to coach against this. Watch out for just sticking the formatting bar somewhere, rather put it against it. This was an interesting model pop-up paradigm, and some very clear calls to action at the bottom, which worked well. What really pleased me about this was just around how the security alerting would work. So again, an indication of there's a security issue, allowing the person granting access or potentially blocking a user. What I thought was really good here was this optional feedback paradigm, so actually surveying the person after they've made a decision, a very good idea. And then successful here, and then again a further on survey. Getting that positive feedback loop, I think, is very, very important in terms of your design, but you should use it selectively and sparingly. You don't want to constantly be surveying the user about how they're using the application. One thing is it's quite tight, and that's certainly fine. This is kind of bordering on a high fidelity wireframe, so I think some of these things could be iterated out a little bit faster. But good use of iconography, leveraging off well-known patterns, and I felt this was a solid set of wireframes. So, I think wireframing is a large part of user-centered design. It's a large part of us being able to communicate what it is exactly that we are building, and I think that it's an important tool to have in the tool belt, and it's something you can continue practicing. It's a good idea to look at how other people have done wireframes, and go through a lot of iterative experiences. For me, still, the most powerful thing, as a practitioner, is that I have a whole bunch of pens and pencils, and I'm drawing on A3 paper all day long. That really is where most of my wireframing happens, and then from that, formal wireframes have been put together for sign off from client. So draw a lot, think a lot, sketch a lot. Look at how digital things are being built, and think about what paradigms and patterns work well and don't work well. But the quality of the submissions have been really, really great in this course, and I would say keep up the good work and continue doing good wireframing.